So difficult to play into those super poke-heavy champions with the all-in sometimes, because as you said, as soon as you fall behind, as soon as TSM has that point of control, it's all or nothing, right? You can't just sit there and allow Varus and Xerath to have their game. So I respect Origen for going in for it, not sitting under the turret and waiting till 88 CS or something to go for the all-in. Just get it over with, get in there and go down swinging.
Yep. So as you can see, Origen doing that before game chant. They like to say, we can do it.
I like
Amps
that.
them up, gets
That's a
them
positive
ready.
attitude, man. Half the battle is mental.
Yeah, they're actually all about that over in the Origen squad. Their facility over in Denmark very much focuses on mental health, well-being, being physically fit. They strive to be the pinnacle of esports organizations.
Motivation, work, improvement, team. Wasn't that the
It's, they've moved past that, Cloud. They're trying to forget that phase of Origen.
Hey, those are all good words.
But they're going to be going up against TSM today. And TSM, in my opinion, have definitely had a bit more of a disappointing split. I mean, the argument could be made for Origen as well, considering how they finished last split. But I feel like for both teams coming into summer, expectations from fans were actually very high.
Yeah.
Largely because for TSM, they actually ended a very close final. The way in which they were playing, in my opinion, was very much the MSI meta, where they were utilizing flex picks between both Bjergsen and Broken Blade. They were very aggressive and fast-paced in how they played the early game. And I felt like that this type of meta would suit them a lot. But coming into summer, it does feel like that they've struggled a lot. And like their very first game against Team Liquid, they even drafted like a heavy scaling comp with Azir and Ezreal, and they just got rolled over.
It felt like the criticisms that have been levied against TSM in seasons past time and time again, where it's, well, TSM just waits to scale. Where's the actual proactive play early on in the game? And Spring Split, at least the second half of it, to me felt like a breath of fresh air into TSM. Bringing in Zix as coach, revamping some of these old strategies, trying new things. And it's exactly as you're describing, going up against Team Liquid, it looked like a different squad. And in summer, while they're not doing badly, they have a winning record.
They do, yeah.
The thing is, when you have those three letters in front of your name, there are expectations set for you as an organization, as the winningest organization in North American history. And just having a winning record isn't enough for TSM and their players and their fans. And you know they got to be wanting to get back to the top.
Yeah, and I watched their most recent game against the Golden Guardians. That was quite a game. Definitely an interesting one to watch. And I'm hoping that coming into this tournament, they've shaped things up. I know there's been a lot of debate, largely from fans between Akaadian and Greg. Coming into this game, they've decided to use Akaadian, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he stacks up to the likes of Kold, because in Europe, he's considered a very methodical jungler, while when he gets his hands on Rek'Sai, he's very much about trying to make a lot of early game plays. A lot of the time, he spends tracking and playing around lanes that have pressure, and he's very much about trying to control the enemy jungler and make sure that their early game impact is as limited as possible. So very much an Smithy style, one could argue. However, recently Smithy's been a little bit more on the aggressive side. But I'm excited to see that matchup, see how things play out.
And I also think it's interesting to talk about the difference between how these two teams finished in spring compared to one another, even though they were both second. Because we heard the players discuss it a little bit before we started the 2v2. The North American finals were very close. It was a best of 5 that went to the full 5 games. The last game could have gone either way. There were a couple critical errors from TSM that pushed it in the way of Team Liquid. Neck and neck. Whereas in the European final, G2, they 3-0 Origen, not once, but twice because of the format change. So it was very clear which one of these two teams was superior. And so that debate and that question always comes up online. Well, which is better? Is it better to have your top team only be slightly better than your second best team, or to have your top team just cut everybody down?
Yep, and one of the fun discussions I always love reading was, is Origen actually that good? If they got that cleanly dismantled by G2, can they really be that strong? And then the world came to learn how strong G2 actually was.
Yeah.
And Origen is still trying to prove themselves. This split so far has not been the best. They're off to a slow start, but this trip to LA is definitely looking to reinvigorate some of the players, and I know that Origen and Kyoto and Mithy specifically have come to this event to destroy TSM and Zven.
Revenge.
Zven is who they want to take down. So I'm expecting a lot of prep coming into this game, and I can't wait to see what both these teams bring.
For those of y'all who might have missed the stat on the bottom of the screen at the beginning of this game, Zven and Mithy had played 350 professional games of League of Legends together. and only recently had been broken up to join new partners in their respective bottom lanes. We'll see how they face off now. TSM on the blue side after winning the 2v2. Irelia, Lux, Draven, Sivir, Sona, Karma all banned away. The Yuumi did make it past the Dan phase this time, but Origen knows TSM likes to play some of those Sona comps. They don't want them playing that this time around, but that Yuumi is locked in.
Origen going to leave that one up. I'm curious as to what they have prepared for it. Things like the Rakan is still available. Strong engaged support. But Origen immediately going to lock in the Sejuani Yasuo now. This is a very prevalent duo, 2v2 mid especially. One of the things that we've been seeing a lot around the world is the Gragas Yasuo combo. But one of the advantages of putting Sejuani and Yasuo together is Yasuo can help proc the passive from Sejuani, which means it's very easy to then proc her E as well. So it's a very potent duo. There's a small knockup as well on Sejuani. So they naturally synergize together, and it immediately gives you a very potent 2v2 mid jump.
Right. Anything that's just a slight displacement allows Yasuo to trigger the last breath, make sure he can get onto those back lines, and man, did TSM pick a bottom lane that will be hard to kill later on in the game. Ezreal kites hard enough already, but with Yuumi attached to him, you have got to fully commit to bring this dude down. One more pick for TSM before the second half of the bans come through, and it's Trundle.
Oh, and Origen with the immediate answer of the Pyke as well. I was not expecting this from Origen. Usually when we think of Pykes in Europe, we think of Hylissang, we think of every G2 player.
I was going to say, you have a whole team of them.
But it's not usually something that Origen go for. However, Origen do often talk about how deep their champion pools are and how they have a lot of respect for their own ability to play pretty much anything within their wheelhouse. So we're going to be seeing, I expect, Mithy on the Nukeduck, but perhaps Origen have adapted a couple of G2 tendencies and they'll be flexing some stuff around.
Well, remember, this is patch 9.12, so the recent nerfs to Pyke's wave clear on his abilities have not gone through yet. So the champion is still just as viable in solo lanes as it ever was on this patch. We'll see how Origen want to play that one as we go into the second half of the bans. It's Azir banned away by Origen, keeping the Emperor of Shurima away from the King of North American mid lane as TSM ban out the Gragas.
Interesting that they would ban the Gragas away here. Given that they see the Sejuani, I'm curious as to whether they wonder if the Gragas could maybe be a mid lane pick or a support pick, and they were worried about pairing that up with the Yasuo as well, so they just kind of want to limit that as an option. Remember the Origen could also flex the Yasuo down towards the bot lane themselves. This could be a Pyke Yasuo bot lane. And while that would be very aggressive, it would also be very European.
So this draft is coming across to me as very European already, in that there are 4 champions locked in, and I know where one of them's going. The other
Do
3
you
are just
though?
like, all right, okay, well, I guess if we might want to see jungle Neeko and top lane Sejuani with a Trinity Force, sure, that might be what we get. I'm gonna mark doubt on that one, but TSM still have 2 more picks to make of their own. Those solo laners are yet to be locked in unless they want to play Trundle top. Akali will be the first pick up there.
So TSM right now, they have a pretty long range comp, very safe bot lane. The Trundle is a good answer to Sejuani, especially early. It gives you a little bit more laning power. And at 6, assuming that the Trundle and Akali are your mid-jungle duo, this is a very strong 2 versus 2 that can allow you to gain priority. TSM is doing a bit of a hover right now.
Come on, come on, come on. No.
Oh, they pivot to the Jayce. That is going to be going up towards the top lane for Broken Blade. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that this Neeko is top, the Yasuo is bot, and what we're actually still waiting for is the mid laner for Origen right now.
Let's see what they decide to go for here, as I'm actually willing to bet it's probably another flex pick that gives me no clue as to where they're actually going at all. Ornn is still flexible. He's a little bit less flexible than some other picks. Okay, Yorick's not flexible at all. All right, this actually helps. Thank you, Origen, for throwing me a bone here.
Yep.
So it's going to be the Yorick top up against the Jayce, Sejuani in the jungle. That's what I know. Tell me the rest.
So the question ultimately is, will we see the Neeko bot lane or will we see it in mid? The thing about Sejuani Yasuo is, as we already talked about, it does give you a strong 2 versus 2. However, early on, I will give a slight advantage over to the Trundle and the Akali, but it will definitely make for some exciting matchups. However, in terms of the actual laning phase in bot lane, I feel like Yasuo can have a pretty healthy laning phase up against the Ezreal, but it looks like based on the summoner spell choices that this is what they will stick with. They're going to keep with the Neeko in terms of farm, but it's also very safe. in a 1 versus 2 because the amount of wave clear that it has, it gives a lot more freedom for Mithy to roam around the map and work with Kold to try and find picks, especially around the mid.
And that's what I like to see with a pick like Pyke. I don't want to see you sitting in your lane just trying to get a 2v2 advantage. Get out all over the map. As soon as you've got a point in each ability, it's time to start roaming up and down the river. We'll see if Origen can pull that off. Should be an exciting game here. These top laners, too, with the Jayce and the Yorick, 2 split pushers looking to take control over their half of the map.
And I'm just really excited for this matchup as well because I feel like many fans aren't really sure where to rate both Origen and TSM right now. Given that Origen has been struggling over the last few weeks and TSM has had their up and down performances, a convincing win for either of these teams could definitely be big for them as they move on to the rest of the split.
Or a bloodbath could be just as fun to watch one way or the other as we're gearing up to jump into our next game of the day. TSM versus Origen. Number 2 versus number 2 hitting Summoner's Rift here now. As you can hear the crowd start to chant for their favorite teams. TSM chants ringing loud and clear. Origen chants following them up too, of course. As the first thing I want to point out here, Hail of Blades on Kold Sejuani.
Oh.
This is a tech adaptation to deal with Trundle specifically, so he does not get extra resistances from your Aftershock proc and send you into the negatives.
That's smart. I like it a lot. This is the first time I'm personally seeing it, but it definitely makes a lot of sense. As you rightly said, by not proccing the Aftershock, which is one of the big things that Trundle is used to as an answer to the Sejuani, now not having that available, I'd still give the slight advantage in terms of the matchup to the Trundle,
yes.
but also just being able to proc your E even faster will also help a lot in that 2 versus 2. So I still think we're going to see a lot of early skirmishes around these Rift Scuttlers. We'll see where they look to prioritize, but have a look at what's going on the mini-map right now. Notice how Nukeduck, Kold, and even Mithy are sitting in their own half of the jungle, knowing that the top side has been warded. And so they don't want to give information away right now, but they will be forced to walk over this ward. So TSM will have full insight on what's going on.
All right, they'll clear it out, but notice how that's not the real Nukeduck.
I got baited.
That is the fake Nukeduck, my friend. That is actually our friend Patrik hanging out here in the top side of the map. It will be Nukeduck going towards the bottom lane while Patrik lanes mid. So will
my
see
prediction
the
in draft was right. It was the Yasuo Pyke in the bot lane, just not the players that we expected to be picking them. And in terms of matchups, I think this is better for the Neeko. Having a range advantage over the Akali gives you a lot of pressure. And I do think as well that Yasuo can lane fairly safely up against the Ezreal for the most part. So I think that this swap from Origen makes a lot of sense, and I personally quite like it.
Yep, I'm digging it pretty much myself as well as Kold makes his way into the bottom side here. He's gone 1 camp. He went red buff all the way across the map. And now Smoothie has nowhere to go to get to his AD carry. They're going to splat the cat, and that's first blood over to Origen.
Beautifully played by Origen, and what aggressive pathing from Kold. He does his red buff and immediately paths towards bot lane to go for a level 2 gank on Sejuani. Hail of Blades, Sej, demonstrating the power, but they also got an easy target because their focus was Smoothie. Notice how he split off from Zven. He wants to build that passive suite and give Zven the shield, so Nukeduck flashes in to get the knockup onto Zven and says, listen, you have 2 choices here. You either sit here and eat the knockup and maybe keep your support alive, or you flash away and you keep yourself alive at the cost of your support. And Zven made the decision to keep himself alive.
And Origen not only got themselves the kill, they burned the flash from Zven, they burned the heal from Smoothie. Also worth noting, Yuumi usually picks between 3 summoner spells in Heal, Exhaust, and Ignite. The most defensive options were the choice this game from Smoothie, opting for both the Heal and Exhaust to deal with the dive coming in from the Pyke and the Yasuo. And now Mithy going into the bottom lane here yet again as Kold shows up, and they mop Zven up. Akaadian shows up, and it's a little too little, a little too late, and Origen are 2 kills on the board.
And typically when you see an Ezreal Yuumi bot lane, you do not expect ganks to come down here. It is usually a lane that is so difficult to actually set up plays onto that you just kind of leave it to farm. You leave it as is. Maybe you can kind of threaten some dives to force them off the tower because of their lack of wave clear, but you really don't look to play through that lane. But Origen are going against that, and they are just hard camping this duel. Look, you can even see Akaadian is on the bottom side of the map, but he can't get in position quickly enough to be able to help. And Kold, along with flashing into the duo, paired up with the Yasuo and the Pyke, easy setup allows them to find another kill, and Origen's bot lane off to a great start.
League of Legends is a game of seconds. Because Kold is there a second and a half early, that means Akaadian can't do anything but watch as bottom lane falls to pieces, and Mithy is now in the top lane. Here's what we wanted to see. The Pyke making moves across the map. Alphari is able to land the slow onto Broken Blade. Mithy not gonna grab that hook, but Broken Blade now caught up in the cage, has to flash away.
So they force even more summoner spells in the early game. Origen are just being so proactive on the map right now. Kold forcing ganks bot, Mithy making plays up top, and while Akaadian will walk away as the Scuttle Crab victor, Nukeduck in a 1 versus 2 is holding the line.
Windwall, a very useful tool for being able to farm up underneath the turret here. Fires off the Tornado to grab a little bit of extra CS. Plates will go the way of TSM, so they're at least getting something out of the fact that their opponent's support was roaming during this time. But considering they still got the flash from Broken Blade on the top, it'll come out in favor of Origen if they can capitalize on that in the next 5 minutes.
Notice that both Kold and Nukeduck haven't even had an opportunity to go back to base yet. They're still sitting on a lot of this passive gold that they've been picking up from all these kills, and now Kold will have the opportunity to spend it. So this allows Zven and Smoothie to play a little bit more aggressively. They have better vision lines set up towards bot, and they have a lot more wards controlling the topside river. So for now, TSM feel like they have a little bit more control over the entirety of the map. But you still have to bear in mind, where is Mithy? Where is Kold? What lane will they look to play towards next? And I think that given the summoner spells are still down towards bot, I would quite like to see Kold make another trip to this duo down bot lane.
Based on what you told me before this game, Vedius, about how Origen want to take down TSM, get some revenge for Mithy, they're playing to that right now with both those kills having themselves occur in this bottom side of the map here. No kills going over to the Yasuo himself, so Nukeduck not getting them is suboptimal, but considering they've still got them, that's something to work with as Mithy goes for the flash play onto Zven, who is going to be taken very low. Couple more auto attacks will do it, and that is a third one for Origen.
Beautifully done by Origen. They don't even need their jungler, as now Bjergsen goes on to Patrik. Trundle on the wings.
Akaadian shows up, but a level 5 Trundle doesn't have a lot to offer after Patrik has already disengaged. Bjergsen did a good job getting the ultimate out of Patrik, but had to use his own to do it. And now that TSM has shown where they are, Origen goes after the Infernal Drain.
Now, it's very dangerous for TSM to go for any kind of fight here when Alphari has a teleport advantage. This means that not only do Zven and TSM have a man down, but there's the risk of turning into a 5 versus 3 as well. So given the state of the map, there's no real risk of getting ganked here. Nukeduck and Mithy know that their jungler is nearby. Zven feels that they have okay vision control around the bot side of the map, and they can play in this setup. But Mithy lands such a clean hook between all those minions to set up onto Zven that they're able to just find that kill. And only now are the summoner spells back up for the TSM duo. But Nukeduck has hit level 6. He has already completed his Berserker's Greaves, and what could have been a challenging lane is now heavily in the favor of Origen.
Origen definitely taking over this early game here. 3 kills to 0. Infernal Drake under their belt. Also having about a 700-ish gold lead at 7 minutes into the game. Feels pretty solid for these guys. TSM yet to get themselves a kill anywhere, but have only died in the bottom lane. Top side even on farm. But the thing is about being even on farm in a Jayce lane, Jayce isn't supposed to go even.
Yeah, and as the game progresses, this matchup is only going to get harder for the Jayce as well. Early laning phase, we saw Broken Blade was actually building up a pretty solid advantage, but that roam from Mithy up towards top lane to force the flash was so valuable because it now forces Broken Blade to play on the defense. Another play happens bot.
Bottom side popping off once again. Zven going to be taken low. Akaadian going into the back line. Nukeduck gets himself away. A nice knock-up to disengage that one, and TSM will not get their kill.
Now, the advantage for TSM is that the jungler is on the top side of the map, so while they will lose their blue buff, they can look to play for a couple of plates, and there's no real assistance. They just have to be careful of this ward that sits behind them, and the teleport that is available on both Patrik and Alphari.
Origen are deciding, though, since TSM is hard committing to the bottom side of the map, why not go for the top? Broken Blade keeping himself alive ever so barely. Alphari is able to make that kill go through, and now it might just be a second. Patrik shows up to the party a little bit late, but he's in time to grab the kill, and that is 5-0 for Origen.
Origen are taking everything right now and are even holding the line in the bot lane. Notice that they still have 4 plates available. So even in a 2 versus 3, TSM cannot secure any plates. Origen makes the cross-map play happen, and it turns out beautifully. So again, Origen know where the enemy jungler is. They know they can force this play. They also know that they can match teleports because Patrik is just going back to base. So even if Bjergsen TPs him towards the top side of the map, they're always going to be at a numbers disadvantage. So beautifully executed from the side of Origen. TSM now 0-5 in the kill score.
TSM at least finally attempts something, but when the attempts don't work out, you're in a really bad place. Smoothie barely keeps himself alive by attaching to Zven after the last breath connects, but Nukeduck is not yet done. He continues going forward, forcing Zven back underneath the turret. Get used to that view, my friend.
This 2 versus 2 is extremely difficult for Zven and Smoothie right now. If Mithy had not missed that X, that duo could be at risk of dying, but no ultimates are available right now. The risk of a dive is real, though, as you'll notice. Patrik and Kold making their way down.
It could be the 4-man team play in the bottom lane from Origen. Instead, they are going to back themselves away, settle with taking the Scuttle Crab in the bottom part of the river. Akaadian goes for the Rift Herald as soon as it spawns in the top lane. Plays weren't working out on the bottom half of the map, wants to invest up here topside instead. Kold wanders through mid. Doesn't really even care that his opponents now know where he is. Instead, it's going to be Origen making sure they get up to the top side of the map as fast as possible towards that Rift Herald pit, making sure that Akaadian is not there. He had disengaged from his attempt earlier, and Origen will clear out that control ward. Mithy's up here in the top half of the map now as well, and it's Origen going after Shell.
So TSM saw that the potential dive was happening bot, so it was smart of Akaadian and Bjergsen to walk up towards the Rift Herald and look to try and trade this objective. The problem is that the moment Mithy disappeared, they now recognize, okay, the ability of Origen to collapse on us in this Rift Herald is so quick that we have to disengage. So TSM are just running out of options and are just getting forced off of every single objective. And it's just because of how quickly Origen is moving on the map. They're utilizing pressure in bot to translate that into mid, and now they're going to secure their first tower of the game up topside.
Shelly dropped. When the turret has less than 2 plates of health, means it will be taken down instantly. First turret gold plus all the associated plates goes over to Origen, who are now 3,500 gold ahead. 11 minutes into this game. Shelly's still pushing down the top lane. Alphari's going to get another charge off with that one onto the tier 2. Nukeduck continues to defend the bottom side, despite the fact that Origen has been all over the map. Mithy rotating all over the place. Look at Nukeduck's farm compared to Zven. He's not behind at all.
Nope, no, he is not. Nukeduck, he did admittedly get a lot of help during the laning phase.
Yes, sir.
But right now he's sitting very comfortably in the 1 versus 1. Looks like he's working towards that static shiv. And typically what I would say here is I'd love to see TSM setting up around the Drake while all those plays are happening topside, but I don't even know if they can look to fight for this Drake right now. And I think it would be extremely dangerous given that Patrik is going to make this rotation down. Broken Blade does have teleport though, so does Alphari.
This is going to turn into a bloody one real quick here, Betty, as TSM, Infernal Drake down to about 2/3, 1/3, 1/4. Akaadian's able to secure that one. TSM back themselves away. How did that not turn into a bloody one?
Looks like Origen made the choice of rather than going for the fight, they just wanted to commit to plates towards the other, to the bot lane. Just get more gold onto Nukeduck, go for a steal onto the Drake. They felt like it was pretty safe because it's Sejuani. Mithy just barely misses another hook there. So TSM will pick up their objective. There was the potential risk there, but they felt pretty confident given that Broken Blade was at topside. But given the gold disparity, that could have ended in disaster. But they will walk away with the objective. And now they're still kind of working towards those item spikes. And I feel like for TSM, what they need to do is just buy a little bit more time. I feel like they can't force anything until the Akali completes the Gunblade. You need Jayce to at least complete an item. Looks like that he's going to go for either some early lethality very early on. And then once these are done, then maybe they can look to try and force a play somewhere on the map. But given how much control Origen have right now, they have to be very careful about where they choose to make a play.
Patrik going in towards Bjergsen there, recognizing that he hit the Tangle Barbs means he wanted to commit with everything. Bjergsen gets free of the root long enough, or quickly enough, I should say, to escape the follow-up Pop Blossom. So Alphari can't make a kill happen there with his rotation, but he'll get back up to topside in time to intercept this wave from Broken Blade. Origen just responding to the TSM movements across the map. That Drake was the first time TSM found success with a play they made this game. I'm glad to see that the early game not going their way didn't dissuade them from still trying to make a move that they thought could pay off. having a 1-to-1 Infernal comparison is a pretty huge difference compared to a 2-0, and it keeps him in the running for this mid game.
Akaadian tries to flash over the E, but he's still looking for Patrik, who has no flash.
Patrik, can you get out of this one? Kold shows up, throws the ulti down onto the enemy mid laner to disengage here once again. Akaadian going to be brought down to 300 HP, and here comes Alphari. He'll dig him an early grave, throws out the slow, and collects that paycheck.
You can see what Akaadian was trying to do, but the execution just was not there. Getting targeting. Ooh, Bjergsen goes in.
Nicely done, picking up Patrik on the back end of the fight.
Ooh, and Broken Blade will even walk away with the blue buff. So at the very least, TSM is able to get something back on the map. However, in terms of control, it is definitely not that. Bot lane plates have been going down. The entire topside jungle of TSM is littered with Origen wards, and now they're going for Bjergsen.
Bjergsen holding 1v3 here in the mid lane, does still have the Shroud available. As long as Akali's got that, you're not really too worried about anybody blowing you up completely, as Broken Blade has to just keep sitting up here in top lane. Not in the way a Jayce would like to, though. When you're the one sitting underneath your turret 15 minutes into the game, the early game has not gone your way, and Mithy makes his way up here yet again. We're gonna fire off the hook, will not find the accuracy on that one. I mean, not gonna stop pushing up anyway, so Alphari will collide that minion wave into the turret here once more. Mithy will continue sweeping out vision through the top half of the TSM jungle, and it was kind of an anomaly, really, when Zven and Mithy joined the side of TSM. Nukeduck, he loses out on the trade, but Bjergsen waits for the tornado before going back in. Akaadian coming around from behind. Nukeduck outplaying so far, but can he do it again? Goes for the flash into the tornado to find the damage, instead gonna find his own death. Akaadian puts the second one on the board here for TSM.
Bit of a misplay there from Nukeduck. You can see he wanted to try and land the knockup onto Bjergsen so that he could ulti and hopefully get the kill. He also would have bought enough time for Alphari to TP in, who's now in a 1v1 against Broken Blade.
Alphari just beating Broken Blade into the ground. No way out, as now they're going to look to find even more. Alphari has to go into the stasis to keep himself alive. Maiden going to be tanking up the turret. Bjergsen taken down by Kold. Here comes more backup. Zven wants to move in. Mop and Bucket at the ready. Trying to fire off a little bit of damage with Smoothie's help, but he won't be able to grab anyone. Origen have found themselves multiple kills. No deaths in return. Zven is rooted up. They'll pop him. And why not take the loot pinata bonus? The cat pops out and goes down. Ace for Origen.
Origen are obliterating TSM right now. I wanted to see TSM try and make a play towards bot side. I felt like that was the best opportunity they had to get a little bit of control back on the map. And this dive, I think, was pretty solid. Finding a pick onto Nukeduck, starting off this play, because if they can get this tower, they have a couple more options. But again, Nukeduck is just buying so much time. He nearly gets this kill onto Bjergsen, just misses the Q knockup there. Broken Blade then teleports in, and you think at this point, well, they have 3 members, but because TSM faltered on their execution, 2 members are forced to base. So now Broken Blade is left in this 1 versus 1. He still doesn't have his flash. Alphari has a red buff as well, so he can run him down. And while all that's happening, Mithy has made his way all the way to the bot lane. Now, yes, he does miss this Q.
And the ulti afterwards.
But he does end up, and the ulti afterwards, exactly. But he ends up landing the Ignite, he ends up finding the kill, and it's just kind of like TSM trying to reactively turn what was a bad situation into something redeemable, and it ends up just getting worse and worse. Really good route there from Patrik into the ulti follow-up. Means that they can very quickly shut down the bot lane, and honestly, they should have been trying to generate pressure somewhere else on the map, because there was going to be very little that they could do in that situation.
Things are looking grim here for the side of TSM. Down 7,000 gold. Another Drake going the way of Origen. This EU #2 team is popping off so far. TSM have got to find a way to stem this bleeding, but it seems like every time they go to make a move, Origen is just making a move 1 step ahead of them. 2 turrets to 0 still. TSM have yet to take down anything on the Origen lines. Even if you look at the state of the turrets on the Origen side, still most of the health in both top and mid lane. Only turret below half even is that bottom lane turret that was beset by sieges as Mithy roamed around in the early part of the game. Mithy 3-0-2 on this Pyke, and what I was saying earlier was this guy didn't click with TSM, but it clearly wasn't an issue with him or Zven being bad players. As we've seen since their separation, they've both found success, but Mithy on Origen is just a completely different monster from the guy we saw on TSM.
And usually we don't see him on champions like Pyke, so the fact that he's been making so many impactful map movements has been a very exciting to see. and we'll see how much more he can do in the rest of this game. He's now grouped up once again with his jungler, with Alphari. We talked a little bit about this in the draft, where you just kind of want to be moving with a couple of your teams, set up this kind of dunk squad, this pick comp, so you can look for these small opportunities to gain pressure. And right now they set up full vision control around the top side jungle. So I want to see now Origen try and force a play in mid, while TSM are committing members down towards bot.
TSM trying to take down this remaining tier 1, and Patrick's just waiting on the wings. In case they dive Nukeduck, he would be ready with the Pop Blossom. Not gonna happen just yet. Origen, meanwhile, saying, all right, TSM's committing towards the bottom side. Once again, we will recognize where they are investing resources, invest elsewhere, and get the drop on them by taking the objective first. That is 4 turrets to 0 for the side of Origen, and 8,000 gold lead. Look at how that gold is spread out. A 3,000 advantage for Alphari over Broken Blade.
Wow.
When you look at a matchup between split pushers like Yorick and Jayce, 3K gold is a death sentence.
Yes, Yorick naturally outscales the Jayce, but in the early laning phase, that was supposed to be the difficult part. And again, you have to give all the credit to Mithy. His roam top, forcing the flash out from Broken Blade. Now they've caught Broken Blade.
Oh boy, yep, that's a paddling. Kold takes him down. Rampage over to Sejuani, 4, 0, and 5. Hail of Blades is doing good work this game, Vedius.
It certainly is. Love this adaptation that we've seen working out very nicely, and we haven't been able to see the same kind of jungle aggression coming out from Akaadian. TSM are struggling in terms of what answers they have against this Origen pressure right now. Honestly, it's very difficult for them. We've already seen them try to commit multiple members to a single side lane to secure an objective. However, Origen is just so far ahead that even against the likes of Nukeduck or Alphari, they can't dive. They can't sub these plays because of how strong they actually are. And once that Infinity Edge gets completed for Nukeduck, I mean, that'll be a very scary time for TSM.
Then just trying to farm up here in the mid lane, but can't even get close enough to the minion wave to try to shoot a Mystic shot at the cannon minion because Mithy is just waiting there for him. Then we'll get that one at the very end of its lifespan there as Origen still looking for what play they want to make happen next. TSM are pretty confined to their side of the map, Vedius. The vision is not doing them any favors.
So notice how Origen are conceding Baron control because they know how strong their split pushes are. So they're actually just committing to playing towards the strong side. So even though TSM have gained all this river control up towards top, Origen are just forcing their way through their strong side of the map. And it's allowing them to gain all these extra objectives. And notice now, look, they can just rotate up to mid because of how many TSM members have to be sent just to deal with this 3-man unit of Origen.
Mithy gets himself away there. You can see that Akaadian committed the subjugate because they thought there might have been a chance to pick Mithy off, but this is Pyke. Ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly what this champion is capable of doing. Taken down to 30% HP, immediately heals right back up, and he's back to fishing around looking for those picks, sweeping out some vision. And you'll see if maybe you can find a hook here. Will pull Zven back, but a good buffering on the arcane shift, and Zven gets away.
And I feel kind of bad for North American teams because you guys don't really have a lot of Pyke players. You don't have people that like are very.
We have NA Pyke, thank you very much. He's like EU Pyke, but just you switch the first 2 numbers in his KDA.
And unfortunately, when you go up against the likes of many of what we have over in Europe, like Pykes don't sit in lane, right? They spend a lot of time constantly roaming, and that extra invisible pressure that it adds means you're kind of forced to always play on the defensive. And like we saw it from Broken Blade in the early laning phase, we've seen a lot from Bjergsen in early laning too. Like it limits your options, and especially if you've already fallen behind early and you can't gain vision control in River, like it's just so much harder to deal with. So Mithy so far having a great game, 3-0 and 3. Massive props to Kold as well. We already talked a lot about how strong this Hail of Blades Sejuani is, and now we just want to see how Origen's set up for the Baron. I think they should prioritize on finding picks because I think that the Baron is the one way in which TSM can come back into this game, and they're just so strong right now that it's a lot easier for them to just control these parts of the map and constantly force TSM into Fog of War, with which, honestly, is the perfect environment for Origen to succeed.
Well, the one advantage that TSM have in a situation like this is TSM brought 3 teleports to the table compared to the 2 on the side of Origen. So that might be one thing that TSM can leverage here to try to get the sort of jump on someone like Alphari. But honestly, Vedius, this Yorick is so beefy at this point in time, I don't even know if I want to 2v1 him because he's just going to bring the shovel down on somebody. You're going to have to bring even more bodies to the party as Nukeduck and Kold decide they don't need anything more than the 2 of them to take down this Baron, and honestly, I can't argue with it.
Nope, Kold is extremely strong. TSM will have an awareness of what is going on, and now they're going to try and force a play mid.
TP coming in. TSM looking to stop this, but Baron's already going to be taken, and with that one in Origen's pocket, TSM has to disengage, call off any sort of a play they were looking for.
And we were already told the last man.
Oh,
no. We were talking about it before where Origen, I feel like they just didn't need to force the Baron. They should try and utilize picks. And again, the way in which Origen utilized the fog of war, they created so much darkness and mystery. The TSM didn't really want to move anywhere and couldn't get onto the map at all. And that just allowed the opportunity for Kold and Nukeduck to duo away the Baron. And TSM had no answers for it. So now they're on their last legs. They're looking for the base defense. 11,000 is the gold deficit. Let's see if they can find a miracle play back in.
11,000, you're pretty much at the point where you're depending on Origen to make a mistake at this point. You need your opponents to overcommit. You need them to overextend themselves. Go for some sort of a hero play, because that sort of a gold deficit, it doesn't matter how good of an initiation you get unless you're SKT versus EDG 2 Worlds ago. Being down 10,000 gold is normally not a winnable situation, but Nukeduck will continue pushing up here in the bottom side, already with that 100% crit chance, working on the next item, getting even tankier. Bjergsen going in onto Mithy here, trying to find something. The angle isn't quite right on the Yuumi ultimate to get the lockdown on him, but Patrik is going to be taken very low himself. Has to flash away. Now Kold going to be on the front line there, able to find the lockdown onto Akaadian. Broken Blade approaching in from the side. Patrik going to be taken down to 100 HP. Origen trying to turn this fight around. They're doing a lot of work here. It's TSM who cannot find any kills just yet. Alphari down to 1/3. Kold fires off the ulti to disengage. Not going to find anybody there with a direct hit on that one, but the slow field will keep TSM at bay. All the meanwhile, this was a 4v5. Nukeduck still pushing up in the bottom side.
I liked what TSM tried to do there. They had the numbers advantage in mid, and it was easy for them to almost find a big pick onto Mithy, but the mobility from the Pyke was enough to get out of that situation. And then it almost actually baited Patrik into a very awkward situation, and he walked away with like 5 HP. But that was almost a big pick for TSM that would have bought them a little bit more time, wasted the Baron time a little bit more, and as long as they can keep their inhibitors alive, then TSM is in a much more comfortable position. But I feel like Origen should be looking to play a little bit more on 3 lanes. Because in that situation, they ended up all grouping up, and so they couldn't utilize the pressure that was being applied mid in order to take one of the 2 side towers in top of one.
Well, that second Cloud Drake for Origen seems really good for them this game, being able to have that extra speed to run down TSM to find those catches, as well as rotate in between the lanes, as that turret is going to fall in the bottom side here, meaning inhibitor exposed for the first time in this game. 26 minutes in, that's how long it took Origen to crack the base. Still 40 seconds left on Baron if they want to try to buff up one of these waves and make another powerful push. Alphari in that top lane, putting in some work onto the tier 3 up there. That one's going to fall now as well, as Mithy in the bottom lane could be cut out here yet again. Yuumi ulti, not going to find the lockdown. Mithy flashing away after 2 connects. Kold trying to keep himself alive. Looking to turn this one right back around, and they've done it! Kold keeps himself alive. Bjergsen's not able to find the shuriken, and Origen still not losing anyone in this fight. Meanwhile, Alphari knocking on the door to the Nexus turrets, knocking them down. One already out of the picture, as Origen will continue their siege.
Kold just barely walking away with his life thanks to the Triumph, and TSM fail once again to find a pick. Their base is now falling apart as all 5 members of Origen continue to push in.
That was such a Chad play from Kold. He was at 100 HP, said, nope, we're fighting. Just turn around, hit him with the flail, and made sure he got the kill before he fell down. He knew that he was going to go down swinging, and sometimes you get rewarded with never even having to see the black and white screen. 4, 0, and 6 on this Sejuani. 10 out of 13 KP, highest in the game. This guy's popping off.
And Origen, once again, not choosing to take any risks. Very much the Origen style. They know that if things go as planned, then they should end up winning this game. So just go back to base, spend your gold, complete a couple more items, because why not? You're already so strong. Let's just add a GA to the level 16 Yorick
why not?
to make his split pushing even more unstoppable. And now TSM is in this extremely dire situation where, as we already mentioned, they're kind of relying on Origen to make a mistake. Maybe they get too greedy. Maybe they try and dive on Nexus towers. Maybe they mess up on their setup around the Baron.
That's what you need.
That's what you need, because Origen just have so much control over the entire map right now.
Origen having the Warmogs on their Sejuani now means next time Kold drops down to 100 HP, he won't even have to bother galloping back to the base. Instead, he'll just heal right up. Makes that much more threatening on the front lines. Over 3,000 health on this guy. Pretty much impossible to burst down. Doesn't even need the Aftershock to be extra tanky. Akaadian does at least have the Zeke's Convergence up on his Trundle, but when you compare the gold value between these two, it's about 3,500 gold difference between the two junglers. And on a role that doesn't have the highest income in the game to begin with, that is absolutely substantial. As you can see, Akaadian and the rest of TSM just bracing for impact here, trying to make sure that Origen can't move up as freely as they'd like to, but Origen will still take control over this jungle. You can see TSM vision lines just barely trying to creep out of the base with a single ward here and there, but they are mostly confined to these walls. Nukeduck winning out in the 1v1 against Bjergsen, who now has to retreat as Origen once again press the attack.
Just a couple of hits and Bjergsen lost half his HP. He now doesn't have his ulti available. Origen now pushing in mid, top, and bot. They have their eyes set on the Nexus.
Nukeduck going into the back line, looking to find that initiation. Mithy goes unstoppable. TSM goes down. Origen have chased the remaining 3 members into the fountain, looking to clean up even more kills. Bjergsen wants to grab one, but he won't be able to find it. Nukeduck takes him out. The Maiden eats the laser, and that is all she wrote. Origen keeps the EU win streak alive.
Mithy gets his revenge up against Zven. A very important win for Origen, and a very convincing one as well. The early game plays from Kold was so impressive. Level 2 Sejuani, Hail of Blades.
From red, across the map.
Yep. That was absolutely crazy. And then like he came back, he kept the pressure up, he wanted to make sure that this duo had a healthy laning phase, and then, because he hadn't had an opportunity to base yet, Mithy goes back to base first, and then roams top. He's like, hey man, I understand that you're in a bit of a losing matchup, but let me help you. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was just really great teamwork coming out from Origen, and this was kind of what they were praised for last split. So I think they're going to be very happy with this performance.
All right, let's press the rewind here for a moment. You remember back at the start of this game when you said people are having a hard time judging the power level of these teams and saying, all right, if you have a substantial win here over your opponent, that says something as to, hey, we're definitely the better number 2 from Spring. Well, 3-17 speaks pretty loudly, I'd say. Origen had nothing less than an absolute stomping of TSM.
And they did it in a very EU style as well, with the creative draft, something that we are pretty well known for so far, given the MSI and like the Pyke pick. Perhaps the Pyke won't be as prevalent on the next patch. We'll have to see how EU teams adapt. Maybe they'll find something new, but TSM definitely going to be frustrated with that performance. It's tough to say whether they necessarily did anything really wrong. It felt like the Origen just kind of had their number multiple times in the early game, and just every time TSM tried to do something, Origen shut them down.
That's what stood out to me the most, is that both teams were trying to make moves. It's not like TSM just sat there and did nothing the entire game. We saw TSM go for plays. We saw them trying to commit people for a turret bottom side. We saw them try to make a play happen in a couple different spots, but Origen just always seemed to be able to effectively nullify that and then either counteract it or even more frequently, just make a better play somewhere else.
Yes, and I think there were a couple moments where it also hurt TSM with like the Akaadian flash in mid lane that didn't quite pan out, and they tried to set up that dive bot where the execution was a little bit poor, but that just kind of only already made the bleeding worse when TSM were already covered in cuts.
Well, it was a very convincing win for Origen, and to give us a little more about it, let's hand it off to Avli for an interview with the Origen support.
Thanks, guys. Mithy, congratulations on the win. Now, this is your first game back returning to North America since you left us, and you spent it beating your old team and your longtime lane partner, Zven. Was this the return that you were hoping for?
Honestly, yeah. Like the way it went, everything just. I'm just really happy with the way things went. Yeah.
Yeah, and the last time that you were on TSM, we saw that there was like a lot of internal struggles and kind of like drama trying to figure out how to kind of revive the team. So tell me about what it's like being on Origen and kind of compare that for me.
Yeah, I mean, I just felt like the 5 guys, we didn't just mesh well enough, and we got a lot of support, and we really tried a lot of things. So I learned a lot about what worked for me, at least, because I really had a lot of self-reflection to do there and see what it was that makes a good team and so on and so forth. And yeah, it just feels like in Origen things click faster, and it's just easier to talk about problems, and everyone's more open. And it's not like it wasn't like that in TSM. It's just, I don't know, sometimes it just clicks, and right now it's clicking for me much better here. So I'm just happy to be in Origen.
And we got to see you give Zven a hug on the other side when you were doing the handshake. Have you had a chance to catch up with him since you've come?
A little bit. Honestly, like the whole hugging thing is pretty weird because when you lose, you don't really like. You just want to shake hands, and just like look at the game and just like your head is somewhere else. So it feels really awkward for me to hug. Not that not that it's weird for me to hug Zven, or Bjerg for that matter. It's just I know how it is when you lose and you have to hug because we're on camera. So yeah, I didn't really know exactly what to do, but yeah, I mean I did catch up with him a little bit, and I'm hoping to keep catching up with him whenever we find the time.
I think it's fine. You're all friends, just showing that support. But speaking of maybe a new friendship, our next game is Cloud9 versus Fnatic. North America needs a win right now. They need a little help. So what advice would you give to Cloud9 to knock Fnatic over?
I mean, I think it's good that C9 is trying to stick to their guns. It didn't really work against G2, but I don't know what works against them, to be honest. So. I feel like it's a good idea, like a good approach from them, and they just keep doing the same thing. Stick to your own guns, do what you do best, and see if that is good enough.
Yeah, we're gonna see if that works. But Mithy, thank you and congratulations again. And for more on the game, let's hear from the State Farm Analyst Desk.
Thank you, Avali. As Origen completes the sweep for the EU teams across the first 3 games of the day, we welcome Deficio.
It says Ender.
Not so much Ender, although feel free to follow Ender on Twitter, the newest addition to the LAC team. I'm sure he could use the boost.
He can't even defend himself.
To the social stats. But Deficio has joined us here on the desk, and he instructed me to correct all credit, all drafting credit was to go to Deficio for this Origen draft this time around. Well drafted, my friend.
Yeah.
And from here in the Analyst Desk studio. That was an impressively done draft.
The players, we have this thing, I can just think it and they instantly get it.
The main question I had then was, were you also drafting for the show match?
Well,
the draft there didn't look as good.
No, it did not. We had one strategy for the show match. I can just say that, and we kind of did it with Origen here as well. Was take the Sejuani early, but then NA took it.
And then they
And then we didn't have anything. But NA didn't take it today.
But it didn't happen
They didn't take it today.
If we take a look at the drafting, though, here for Origen, once again, we have a Yasuo draft that ends up kind of essentially being able to go wherever it wants.
Yes.
Origen flexes it down to the bot lane alongside that Pyke. And attention towards the bot lane seems to be the name of the tournament right now, the way the teams are playing.
100%. I think there's a lot of CC setups you can play with in bot lane. There's a lot of different all-in compositions, like the Yasuo in this case with the Pyke, that can be super, super annoying to deal with. In this case here, obviously, early ganking a Yuumi, trying to punish her for not having her flash. And the moment you get the first kill, you have to keep going. You're playing Pyke Yasuo. You're never going to stop.
Yeah, exactly. And they were able to execute it really, really well. Not only did Mithy get to beat Zven, he gets to do it playing a flashy champion, playing the Pyke.
Yeah.
And I think it's exciting to see Origen, I think, break away from some of more of the expected norms for them. Like, this was more of a G2 style of play with flexes moving everywhere, and your bot laner is playing mid, your mid laner is playing bot. And I think that this is one of the biggest strengths that Europe has been bringing to Rift Rivals and having, in general, is that we're talking through that draft, and even you, as the general manager of Origen, weren't exactly positive who was going to be piloting what, right? It's like, how is the other coach supposed to know and you don't even know?
And then you also have this situation for TSM. They're on blue side, which makes a lot of sense. It is considered the stronger side right now. They go into the second phase. They have to pick their solo laners. They want to grab things that technically they could actually swap between. Jayce could go mid, Akali could go top lane. And then you play against a player like Alphari, who is basically 15, 20 champions in his pool, saying, well, actually, things like a Yorick here is good against both things. I can grab it. What are they going to do? They put the Jayce top lane against it. You get ganked once.
Yep.
Yorick gets to 5 or 6 and then, destroys them.
And you still see that rigidity in champion select for North American teams really coming back to bite them, while the added flexibility for the EU teams, especially when you take into account a lot of these bot lane players, Perks, Patrik, willing to play non-traditional, ADCs or, just move away from marksman entirely. Again, how much more that opens. Yes, the Jayce could have gone mid, but you were never concerned that the Jayce was going to go bot lane, but it was something you had to consider for the side of Origen the entire time. So adding that kind of third element into champion select is what is seeming to be so difficult for NA teams to pick through.
Yeah, I mean, they're getting so many, counter picks and kind of really strong lane matchups and then playing very well to them, right? As you say, using the Yorick, which works well both against the Akali as well as the Jayce. You bring this super aggressive all-in bot lane, which Yuumi can really struggle against because Yuumi, so much of the damage in the early game is through auto attacks. If Yuumi detaches, she's incredibly vulnerable. If she's attached, you just don't have enough output with an Ezreal and a Yuumi to ever compete with the Pyke and the Yasuo. So I think the flexibility of the European teams is really showing through and getting them these strong lane matchups, which they're then having the skill to execute on.
Shout out to Patrik going mid for the first time with Neeko, laning against Bjergsen. Obviously did really well, but I also got to say, just like looking at the draft, the moment the Yuumi came in as first pick, I was like, not revealing any strategy, but like Mithy might have in some pregame talks said, guys, we should draft something where we can hard camp the bot lane. So Yuumi, fairly easy to gank and actually like shut down. Mithy against Zven, he gets his chance to like set up a bunch of plays on Pyke, which is not normally something he's actually been showing a lot on stage, but good to see.
And again, I think we're also seeing here how quick paced the EU teams are prepared to play the game-winning fight, essentially, where the nail was put into the coffin came 16 minutes into the game. I mean, come on, we can't even... The Baron hasn't spawned yet, and the EU teams are coming away with wins.
So we're actually saving Nukeduck here. We're not showing his Q flash that missed just before when he died, but we are seeing Alphari at this point on Yorick, who can just do whatever he wants.
Yeah, exactly. At a certain point, once the Jayce is behind, there's no escaping from Yorick. He's not able to 1v1 him at all. Gets absolutely destroyed. All of Origen collapsing to this bottom lane to just wipe TSM off the map.
And at this point, like, the comp is already crazy and fun to watch, and you can literally just make plays in every lane because you have actual carries in every single lane. You also have Kold on Sejuani, who played an absolutely amazing game. So TSM just get completely run over, and I'm not just gonna blame it on draft or anything. I just think the European teams, as you highlighted with early game, players are allowed to be very aggressive. Players are allowed to take 50-50s, trusting in their mechanical skill that they can actually execute it. And I think that is the way the game is intended to be played right now.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing, some of the reasoning why things like Yuumi, as well as the Sonateric are not as popular in Europe, because people are fully prepared, with these aggressive picks to punish them. In Europe on 9-12, it's something like 4 picks, 4 bans for Yuumi. In NA, it's something like 16 bans and 4 picks, right? Like, it is being considered such a big threat.
Right.
Easily handled here. Sonateric banned almost all the time in NA. Easily handled by G2 with the types of lanes that you just don't see in North America. And I think that these North American teams are going to have to adjust and adjust very quickly. Otherwise, the LEC is running away with it.
Right. I mean, so is the takeaway here, the prevailing takeaway, that Europe at the moment has identified the correct way to play League of Legends? For North America, it's going to be about speeding up their ability to play and even pulling in a couple new picks within the next 2 days?
Probably. I mean, it's very hard now to disagree with that statement.
Yeah,
right.
It's like, oh no, I think Europe is playing it all wrong.
They're playing incorrectly.
What a weird matter.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think with NA, like even you can win obviously with these kind of stuff.
I mean, Mithy just said stick to your guns,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But I think is that then stating that the barrier of execution or the amount of outplay that you have to come to the table with, or overperformance you have to come to the table with, is amplified because you can't play the picks that Europe is playing?
It might be actually that case. I think at least don't shoot yourself in the foot. Like with C9's first game draft, where it's like Sonateric and Kindred. I was like, hang on, you don't even have a jungler now in the early game who can actually try and help you when you have this instant losing bot lane that Sonateric always is. And then you also you counterpick yourself with Gnar when there's already a Yasuo, so you just had like losing lanes everywhere. At least don't go to that point. Try and even out the early game by having picks that can actually contest teams that will fight you in the early game, and then see if you can get past the first 15 minutes without being too far down.
Well, pressure is mounting for the North American teams as they suffer their 3rd loss in a row. We are stepping away, but on the other side, Cloud9 challenges Fnatic in Game 5, so don't go anywhere.
Looking to use the flash, get these stuns, get some kills. Here comes the damage. Broken Blade will be taken down, but one more auto attack seals the deal. You win these! Blue side! Now Smoothie has nowhere to go to get to his AD carry. They're gonna splat the cat. Broken Blade keeping himself alive ever so barely. Alphari is able to make that kill go through, and now it might just be a second. Patrik shows up to the party a little bit late, but he's in time to grab the kill.
We can fight the duo. Fight them. Maybe on Ezreal, no flash Ezreal? No, that's good enough. That's good enough.
Just help. We get tower, boss. We get tower.
I'm going on this guy.
Okay. So good. He can get Yuumi also, I think.
I'll bang with Kold.
I stun. Nice, guys.
Nukeduck going into the back line, looking to find that initiation. Mithy goes unstoppable. TSM goes down. Origen have chased the remaining 3 members into the fountain, looking to clean up even more kills. Origen keeps the EU win streak alive.